Okay, so we have Mark Brombacher, who's going to give us an update on the library building project.
Okay, so I'm Mark Brombacher, I'm the chair of the trustees. And just a little bit of history, new library project started in 2009 when we started doing fundraising for it. 2011, we went through a chair of chairs review where they recommended a new library where we thought the construction grant would be about 2015. In 14, we got money from the town and the state for the planning design grant, and we've been going gangbusters this year, hiring an OPM, doing design reviews, all kinds of committees. Last week, the trustees voted for a site for the new library, and that is the slope site, which is basically out back here behind the town offices. So why do we need a new library? The current building's not designed as a library. There's potential issues with floor loading. It's ADA compliance issues. It's not really, we need to expand to fit the growth of the community and meet the different needs, both for books and community center type functionality. We've had quite a few people in the library and circulation in the past year, over 52,000 people and over 180,000 items. And the programming of the library has been a big hit, with over 2,000 people attending adult and young adult programs, and 6,000 kids for the children's programs so far this year. So the slope site kind of looks like this as a preliminary design. It's, as I said, basically right out back here behind the town offices. The idea was to keep the library in the same general location as the rest of the town functions, to make it more of a campus feel. Where you can see the wetlands delineation and an access road for the fire trucks. Basically, that lower road is a fire access road.
So the main access would be from the present parking lot?
The main access,
downtown.
yes.
Okay.
So there's actually, so this is a look basically from the parking lot out here. You'll be entering on the second floor, and then the first floor will be down below on the level of the current ball field, basically. This was a first draft effort of what the exterior and frontage might look like. There's been a lot of talk of changing this to look less like a school and more like a building the town could be proud of for many years. Some of the suggestions are to make it look like the original town hall. So we're investigating what that would be like. Here's the view of the building from the back, where the ball fields are. On the bottom picture, the ball fields are basically off to the right from that.
Mark, how much larger is this building compared to what the space you have now?
So the plans call for about a 24,000 square foot building, and we're at about 16,000 square, between 15 to 16 right now, somewhere. Depending on the numbers you look at, I don't know how they calculate square footage. It's between 15.5 and 16.2 in the different things I've seen. So
The renderings, they look bigger.
Yes.
This building looks really big.
yes. So here's what the interior would look like on. This is the upper floor where I think basically the upper floor is adult books and staff work area and things like that. And then the lower floor has meeting rooms, the children's area, and things like that. We're hoping to provide meeting rooms that are accessible after hours, like the Cooper room currently is. And the meeting room will be subdivided. I think the meeting room in the plans calls for able to seat 150, or capacity of 150, and it will be subdividable, is the plan. So one of the decisions the trustees were faced was whether to renovate the existing space or to build a new one. And we chose building a new library over renovations, because we, at the request of the Board of Selectmen, we recently did a survey of the town. We had about over 800 respondents. Approximately 40% preferred a new library. The new libraries, the option, the renovation was in the, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was less than 20%, and there were in the 20-some% number that said either or was fine. And then there was about 15% I said that said do nothing. So.
I have another question for you. What was the trustees' feelings with regards to the number of respondents that you got? Was that a good number? Was that low?
I thought 800 was a very good response to a town survey. 800 is more than you get at a town meeting typically. It's not quite the number of people that vote in the town elections, but it's a large percentage. We did not restrict it to only Littleton residents. We did there was a question that said where you reside, and there were about maybe, I forget the exact numbers, there's less than between 50 and 100 people outside of town. We took those numbers out of the survey later and did some other validation checks, and basically the numbers didn't change substantially when we did more analysis of the results.
I mean, the percentages didn't change.
The percentage didn't change. It actually, when we took out the people that didn't live in town and the people that voted many times, the numbers in favor of the library actually went up.
So you had a way to check that and see if...
We checked it. We did not validate that people didn't lie that they don't live in Littleton, which is almost impossible to do. Right? You can go through and try and check their IP addresses to say where they are, but it's unreliable. And like my son is out in Troy, New York. He votes in Littleton, but his address would come outside. When he was working locally, his IP address, if he filled it at work, would say he was in Cincinnati, even though he was sitting in Bedford. So it's almost impossible to validate IP addresses. You have to actually trust that people answer that question truthfully. So.
But you were able to track some, if I voted 3 times from my computer, you could tell I
Yes.
voted 3 times.
We could track by
My
IP
computer
address.
voted 3 times.
So we tracked by IP addresses. There were a couple IP addresses that we thought that were very popular, like a library had a site, the town offices had a site, and one of the trustees, we actually passed out paper surveys for those that couldn't enter online or were at an event where we were passing them out, and that IP address was also, we threw those all in one bucket too. Those 3 addresses, not surprisingly, had a slightly larger percentage favoring the new library, but you would kind of expect, or favoring the library over do nothing, which you would have expected since they're at library and town events already, so.
When you use the term renovation, you mean renovating the space as it is, but also adding
Yes.
to it, right?
Yes.
So it's a renovation and add-on.
Right. So on the renovate, we had 2 different choices. One was to basically knock down where we are and build a new building at that location. The other was to just put a couple additions on. To actually get the square footage and the plans, the architect said we would have to build off the front and the back of the building. And that library actually ends up being bigger than a new library. And the reason for that is based on the current structural requirements, what is the second floor of the library, the main floor if you're coming in from the front, isn't rated to hold books. So we couldn't put any books on basically that floor. And so you need more space for the books outside of that. So we also looked at tearing it down and building new, and that was slightly cheaper than the renovating, but that didn't have a lot of appeal over just renovating, in my opinion. So, as I said, the renovating might not be the cheapest option. Actually, building new turned out to be cheaper according to the estimates we've had so far. And if we build a new building, we free up a lot of space for other services in town. So we get about 16,000 square feet that Park and Rec and Council on Aging and school or Historical Society is looking for space as well. So all of these things could be, potentially, the library space could be repurposed at a cheaper rate, more likely a cheaper rate than building them a new building. So, and as I said, the slope keeps us close to where we're at now.
Mark, what are your projections for the new library as far as it being 24,000 square feet? How long is that gonna last for the town before it reaches a capacity that you need something bigger?
So, when we did the planning, it was for, I think we had to do like a 20 or 25-year plan, and that was the number that the consultant came up with for the size.
So it should be good for 20 to 25 years?
Yes, to get the grant from the state, you have to have, you're building basically the 20-year building, so. So our next steps, we're going to do a geotechnical analysis of the site. They're going to basically dig a couple pits and make sure that it's suitable and we don't find anything, any bodies buried back there. We're working with, the library has a building committee that's basically going through and figuring out the interior and the design of the building at a high level, what functionality we need, where, should the children's room be on this floor or that floor in the space and things like that. Once we get those plans more finalized, we're going to hire a cost estimator to give a firmer number of what the building is projected to cost. We have to submit a grant to the state by January of 2017. After we submit the grant application and before, basically at the May town meeting, we'll need a couple votes from the town. One is to say that they approved that we submitted the grant, and the other vote we'll need is they approve of us using that land, basically. Right now, that site is under the control of the school committee. They're going to declare it excess. There's some finagling going on with the town on who's actually going to control it. But at some point, that land has to be, it can be conditionally turned over to the library so that we can say, when the grant is actually approved, we can say we have a site for it that's been approved by the town. So.
And that's a requirement of the Mass Library Commission, who was the
Yes.
grantor.
Yes. It doesn't have to happen before we submit the application. It has to happen, all of this has to happen before July of 2017. In July of 2017, they will start awarding grants. They rank all the libraries that are applying for grants based on their need, and then they dole out the money based on how much they have available. Everyone else is put on a wait list, a prioritized wait list, and they're pulled off as more funds become available. Once the grant will cover between 40 to 50% of the cost. It covers the cost of the building, but it doesn't cover things like the furnishings inside and parking improvements and things like that. It's not entirely clear. They might also cover the cost of the land. We're trying to figure that out. They do cover the cost of the land, but it's not clear if, since the town already owns the land, how those formulas work. I tried to read through it and I don't understand the legalities.
I think last night Keith said that they would include the value of the land.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure that out. And if we build a lead building, we'll get extra money back from them, which will come back at the end of construction. Once it's certified, we can get an extra 2 to 3.5% of the cost back.
Do you know if that's based on the value of the land as it stands today, or the value of the land developed?
As it stands today.
So the trustees are also going around circulating this with all the rest of the boards in town to get their feedback on what else we need to do. We're going to the school committee. I was at conservation last night. We're scheduled for Park and Rec and the planning board. And the other part, that there's a fundraising group that was initiated by the trustees, but isn't under the control of the trustees. The trustees are like helping, but not running the fundraising group. They're trying to raise money to offset the cost.
You've mentioned in one of your slides that they've been fundraising since 2009.
So the trustees have been fundraising since 2009. This group is starting up independent of the trustees now.
What have the trustees raised so far?
I'm not sure on the exact number, it's in the 200-ish thousand range, so.
You gotta sell T-shirts like the fire department did.
Yeah. And it fluctuates on a daily basis.
Cost you 400 for the T-shirts, you raised 200.
I didn't put in the slide that said the projected cost apparently, but the last figure that we had from the architect would be a 2020 construction price of in the 16.5 to 16.8 million number, I think. I don't remember the exact one.
How much of that 16.8 can be applied by will affect the grant? I'm not saying this right. So the 16.8 is for the whole project, right?
Yes.
But only part of that grant will cover part of the construction, right?
So what's
Construction of the
the
building.
net to this town?
Yeah, there you go, thank you.
You're welcome. You guys figured that number out yesterday, so.
The slope site cost that we had was $15,519,000. Of that, there's $2.2 million in non-reimbursable costs, so that's the FFE, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So the reimbursable cost is estimated at $13.2 million, which means at 50%, that would be about $6.6 million, so the town would be responsible for about $8.9 million,
Assuming we get 50%.
assuming it's
Yeah.
50%.
Because that sounds like that could be a scale, right?
It's quite a variance.
There's I think you can go in, it's a fairly fixed formula, if I understand correctly, but I'm not really, I haven't been through the,
Do you know how many other towns are applying for this grant?
rumor has about 30, so.
Do you know how much is available in funds?
I don't know what's available in this round. I think the total grant is like $110 million across those 30, but I'm not entirely positive.
If you
And
get
I don't know.
waitlisted on a round, at the end of the fiscal year, if you haven't gotten a grant by then, do you drop off and have to reapply?
No, this grant, these grant programs run for like 6 or 8 years typically. So you basically have that, you're on the grant for whatever the period of it is.
Yeah, it just-
I believe they don't close the grant out until everyone's had a shot, but I'm not positive.
If we get a yes on the first round,
Yep.
and we're number one, where are we in the queue?
So if we get a yes on July of 2017, then we have 6 months to come up with our share of the money. If we get, you're number one on the wait list, you don't know exactly when that will clear. It's usually, I think they take people off like every quarter to every 6 months. They must not do it more frequently than that because it would be hard on town meetings. So I guess they pull people off like twice a year, but I'm not really sure.
How many people are on the wait list right now before we even get on there?
No one. There's no wait list right now. It's a new grant, so.
So you'll be going up 3 town meetings really, is what you're looking at over the next special town meeting?
So it's special town meeting, we don't need anything
Okay.
for the library specific.
So it'll be May.
In May, we need 2 votes
For this.
for this. One that says that the town approves that we submitted the grant and that we can be conditionally awarded access to that site.
And then if it gets granted, then obviously in November.
So if it was granted in July, at the November town meeting, we would go and ask for it,
Okay.
the town share the funds. And I think that number you quoted, Bonnie, was the 2020 price, right? It's not a 2017,
Correct,
so.
I believe.
So that has escalation built into it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have the number somewhere, and I apologize for not putting them in this slide.
See, there's really nothing for us to vote on or approve at this point, but I wanted Mark to come in and at least give us the opportunity to ask questions and, and hear the answers directly rather than through rumor and whatnot. So, and I would hope, as you get closer, even when it comes time to put the grant in, maybe we'll have you back one more time and, this is the grant, this is what we're actually saying, so that we're just sort of kept in the loop. Maybe we have Steve in the middle of it, but having Mark.
Or in bed, as you would say.
Well, there you go.
He's been a wonderful asset to our projects.
He is to any project he's on.
So there's no way to know the 40 or 50% until July? Or is it, you said there's a formula that you just haven't?
I think there is a formula, but I'm not sure how accurate
Yeah.
you can go through that numbers. There's, I haven't been playing with that side of it so much.
Well, is there any way to help figure that out for us? Is it, you know,
I
historically?
believe it's
the-
very, I think it's the 50%.
It's pretty
It's
cut and
pretty
dry.
close. Steve and I actually talked about that, so I can't remember where we pulled the information from, but it might be like 49 to 51, and then, you know, a couple of points for the leads, but we used 50 being pretty confident, and that's what a lot of the other communities have done.
Okay, okay. Yep.
I'm gonna have to ask the hard question. But I keep hearing it, so I'm gonna, is there any reason, or multiple reasons, either legally, safety, why we have to have a new library?
So are we absolutely, if we don't have a new library, are we going to be shut down?
Yeah.
No, not at this point, right? There's a potential, like I said, we have issues with ADA compliance. There's some of them we can address, or we're trying to address. For example, just access to the library from in a wheelchair is extremely difficult right now. We're trying to figure out what we can do to address that, to make it easier while keeping the library safe. But even with that, in a wheelchair, you will have trouble in the library. The stacks are too close together, the books are too high, things like that. So we're not going to be shut down over it currently, but it's not user-friendly for wheelchairs and things like that. There are the potential structural problems. We haven't seen any evidence of them so far, so we're safe on that right now. Whether that becomes an issue in the future, I can't tell you. So we are busting at the seams as far as space, right? Like, one of the ways to become more ADA compliant would be to put in more and lower bookshelves. Well, we don't have room. The state requires us to keep our certification to buy materials, spend a certain amount of money on materials every year, right? So the staff weeds books like crazy, right? If you go to the book sales, there's a ton of books that aren't very old that we have to get rid of because we don't have space for them. But we are required to buy them. So.
And that's at the approximate tune of $100,000 a year?
We spend a little over $100,000 total on materials, but some of those are electronic. I don't know what the percentage, how the breakdown is, but it's over $100,000 in materials.
Thank you.
Museum passes also kind of materials now too.
Any other questions? Great, okay. Good luck with your road show.
Thank you.
Chief, if it's okay with you, I'm going to slide the NBC request in first. I'm sorry. Joe, Joe, if you want to come up, and Darrell, if you want to.
You're not going to contest that, are you?
He's got a weapon. The guy never messed with a guy with a stick, right?
Captain Hook, there you go.
I don't think I made enough copies, but you can share them.
Could you make two?
Oh, I made one food. Great.
Be nice, Steve.
That changed date from my printer.
Me too.
Here you go.
Gordon, you want a copy?
Sure.
You probably know this stuff, I know.
I do.
If you have this one.
It looked weird, but I had it upside down.
There you go, right?
Okay. What we have there is the Russell Street School, and that's what we're going to talk about. Let me start off by telling you that we thought we had enough money when we started the project. We bid the project out. We bid both the schools that had to be done. Shaker Lane needed to have
Joe, can we confirm that we're talking about paving?
paving, well,
Yeah.
paving and sidewalk,
Okay.
okay? And Shaker Lane, we had to finish the street coming in from Shaker Lane Road all the way in. That had to be redone, and all the way around to the back. Last year, we had done the whole back and resurfaced the whole thing. We also had to replace the sidewalk, and that was a mandatory almost. We had the snow or ice had created the sidewalk to burst up in certain places, and particularly one place that was bad was the main entrance, and they had trouble with wheelchairs and kids slipping on it. So the sidewalk had to be replaced. It's the long sidewalk. And so we did that, and we decided to bid them both because we were aware that the cost of asphalt had gone up. But if you buy more, they're gonna get a better discount. And so we bid them both. They came in, and we had enough money to do both projects. However, when we finished Shaker Lane, which was the first one, because we wanted to get it done before school started, and also we had to work in between the summer program that was being run down there. But it got done on time, and it got accepted. Then we went down Russell Street, and we thought that was going to be an easy one. Well, the problem we ran into was we couldn't mill it. In other words, we couldn't scrape it because there were so many potholes. If we had scraped it and started to try to blow it in the truck to take back to the asphalt plants, we'd have had brown dirt and gray dirt all over the place because it chops it up real fine. And there were so many potholes, we just couldn't do it. So what we did is we told them to go ahead and put down what we call a binder coat, an 1.5 binder coat, to get us started. And then we also had to add 3 handicap ramps up onto the sidewalk. They had ramps down there, but they weren't really handicapped. They had put a little pavement in to get up, but we put the correct ones in that are required. We also had to move some of the manholes. However, when we got all through the binder coat, we found out we didn't have enough money to put the top coat on, the finish coat. And that's why I'm here tonight. If we want to wait till November, was the town meeting in November? We run 2 risks. One, if it snows, we're in trouble. And 2, we don't know when the asphalt plants are going to shut down. So, you know, that's 2 risks we run. Otherwise, we have to wait till we put in for money next year. So, now, the amount of money we're looking for, and I have to start off by telling you, we did get the school to give us $50,000 to do Russell Street. They were so desperate to get it done. They gave us $50,000. The amount of money I'm looking for tonight is $29,175. And that'll give us enough money to finish the project. I have a final number now, not to exceed. And we have a commitment from the contractor that he will do it. We have the final price, and he said he can do it between now and the end of the month. And we're hoping to get it done, the reason being, he's out of Nashua, New Hampshire. And he is the #1 paver for the state of Massachusetts, would you believe it? He's doing, for example, he's doing all sidewalks of Common Ave right now, BU and so forth. He's doing work down in the North Station area. He's done a lot of paving of streets. And we checked them out, of course, before we hired him, and we found out he had overnight resurfaced the runway at Hanscom Field overnight. So he's got a lot of equipment. We've got a list of his equipment. He has a great deal of equipment. He has enough people. He's well financed. And he was the low bidder. And if you want, I'll go through the bid list, but he came.
I guess, the one question I have, and I'm not sure whether there's anybody in the room that can actually answer it, but we have a very large program apparently, or maybe being ready for a fall town meeting, which is alumni. And it's my understanding that there's likely to be paving to be done during that program.
Yes.
And do we spend
No.
29,000
No.
here and then tear it up?
If you look at where it stops,
Okay.
all right?
That's what
Yeah, I haven't seen the plan, the alumni, but yeah, I was looking at that too. I was concerned about at least part of that.
We took that into account.
Yeah.
when we
Okay.
went through the
We
project.
started
That's fine.
looking at alumni to begin with, that this project was
Yeah, we,
dovetailed right.
that's where we
Okay.
stopped it, because we knew we may have that to come through. Okay? So the bottom line is, as I say, we did get the contract a little bit.
Who's the contractor?
He's out of New Hampshire. His name is
Or,
Newport, yes. Newport, and out of Nashville.
I think it's important to note also that there were some surplus balances in other accounts that PMBC is currently managing that will be closed out. They were trying to look to see if there was a way to transfer balances from one to the other, but because of the way that they're appropriated for specific projects, they can't.
Right.
But we could at town meeting to replenish the reserve fund. So if it were, an issue of drawing it down that far, we could take it from the surplus balance at town meeting and replenish.
Because I think as we looked at them, as we look at closing them out, we're probably gonna free up $20,000 to $30,000 probably within the next couple of weeks, from the other pieces there. And I think that goes back to how we word the town meeting articles, because we get hamstrung based on the estimates there. But, I know people need to know what the estimates are, but we need to maybe think about just putting the warrant article to say $570,000 for PMBC infrastructure repairs, and then put in the descriptive material what the projects are, rather than in the warrant article itself. Because otherwise, we get stuck here. We couldn't do anything in a timely manner to try to get the project completed here.
So it should be pretty much a net zero.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll just switch it from another article at the fall town meeting.
With that caveat, any other questions? If not, can I have a motion?
I so move that we award, or recommend approval of PMBC's request for
29,170?
$29,175
$29,175.
for Russell Street School paving.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any other comments? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm signing this.
Okay. Okay, Joe, thank you very much.
Good job.
We
Joe.
have one other thing we'd like to give to you people.
A bag of money.
Where's the line?
Daryl,
Well, that- that'll work.
Daryl Baker. Daryl has developed a sheet that he'll give you a copy of that we now use, so we know where we stand every month on our projects, money-wise. And as soon as we get it more defined, we're gonna put it on the website.
Great.
oh, great.
Can we give them copies, you want to talk about it at all?
I can just.
This is preliminary, Darrell?
This is an ongoing, so like, well, I mean, I updated after reading of the meetings, I just haven't updated it based on last week's warrants there. So what I've helped them put together is, there's a spreadsheet that's got a summary sheet that summarizes all of the funding allocations for the different projects, and then there's a sheet for each project, so that as we allocate the expenses against the project, we can keep a closer running total there. And then we're still improving the process of reconciling that with Bonnie's books. Yeah, but it's helped us tighten up the process in terms of our warrant process and some other pieces there, but there's still, because sometimes we're charging a project against 3 accounts, there's sometimes a disconnect on which account gets actually billed for the different projects. So again, if we can get it simplified in terms of one account for the things here, I think it'll make it much easier for us to reconcile the pieces there. Because an example, I think there's a $5,000 project from 3 years ago, that, hopefully the project, if we do it, or do we just end that project, free the funds up, and maybe reallocate it in terms of future activities, kind of thing.
This is great, this is the first time we've seen it.
Yeah,
That's
so,
great. Thank you.
the goal is to try to help the process here.
I want to give you one more bit of information. You probably noticed work going on out of the track. We found the track was a problem. It was coming apart. And it took us 2 months. And we've got the contractor, or the actual maker of the track, is replacing the track right now free of charge. Not costing the town a penny. It's about,
Cheap as it gets.
Was it under a warranty of some kind?
Yes.
we had already exceeded, our warranty, but we were down like a year left of warranty.
Yeah.
And so they're working on it now, they'll be there another week and a half, then we'll have a new track.
Get ready for spring.
Great.
And we'll have a new warranty on that.
Yeah.
Well, we're working on that, we don't know how long it's gonna go, but we'll have a warranty on that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Joe, and Gerald, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you. It's just the thing you want to be not a-
Yes, yeah, thank you, right.
Okay. Chief, if you'd like to come and talk to us about the paramedic proposal.
Warranty on brand new work.
Ceiling.
I mean, they'll replace it. It will be short.
Hey, thank you very much.
The chief came in last meeting and gave us a presentation on the proposal for paramedics, and we had some financial questions and asked them to go back and present the numbers in a little different format, so that, and they've done that, and they're coming back to represent to that, the financial piece to us.
So, 3 quick slides to go through.
Yep,
Just,
great, yep.
And then we'll talk about the numbers, because
Yep.
we've kind of changed it up a little bit more than from last time. So, right here, this is a few of the challenges that we face in the fire department. One of them is our ALS service, which is the paramedics that come out of Emerson Hospital. The paramedic service offers up advanced life support, medications, diagnostics, things of that nature that would determine the appropriate facility that we would want to take a patient that was, say, having a heart attack, might need pain medication if there was fractures or something of that nature. So right now, they're based, they have 2 units. One is in Lincoln, one's in Acton. They are doing away with the Acton-based service. So the only truck will be coming from Lincoln. That, as you can imagine, is a significant delay. That's a good 15 minutes or so responding out here, not including rush hour traffic. So obviously that's an issue. Additionally, on top of that is every year the run volume is continuing to go up. Basically the workload, the demographics in town are changing. There's a much greater request for services. On that note, we run 2 ambulances, and one of the reoccurring issues is getting the second ambulance out the door. We are starting to struggle getting the second ambulance out the door. Call members aren't coming back anymore. Priorities are different with everyone's families, their kids, sporting events, things like that. So they're not always available. Or they'd rather have a good night's sleep at night so that they can function normal for the next day at work. Because very commonly, it takes a good 1 to 2 hours to complete a call if you're called out on the second ambulance. So we're starting to rely on mutual aid again for that back-to-back call. And Not only the second ambulance are we unable to staff, very frequently, we're unable to get the second engine out the door if we have a fire call or a crash on the highway. We don't necessarily have that backup coming. We've had to resort to the deputy making sure he drives by the station on the way, because if nobody's there, he's going to need to drive a truck. So.
I like driving the truck for the record.
So, we're proposing a reorganization of the fire department. We'd like to go ahead and apply for the SAFER grant, which is basically 2 years at 100% coverage. That covers salary and benefits for 2 years. We would reorganize the career layout. Right now, we have 4 shifts of 2. We have a fire prevention officer, a swing man during the day, which helps us save overtime, swings around to the first vacancy out, the deputy, myself, and a fire prevention officer. We would like to, the deputy would become the fire prevention officer and do all fire prevention work plan reviews. And then we would take the existing fire prevention officer and our swingmen. They would go to shift. We would use the grant to obtain 6 additional personnel. They would all be medics. We would achieve 4 shifts of 4. That's 4 people around the clock. We would have the ability to staff 2 ambulances or an ambulance and an engine. If they had a crash on the highway, we'd have the ability to get those 2 pieces out right away. By going medic, we can improve our service and not rely on Emerson Hospital anymore. We would take that entire service over for the appropriate diagnostics, medications. We'd be able to start in that 3 to 4 minute time range instead of that 15-minute. We'd have the appropriate facility to go to right away. Sorry, you can go ahead on the next one. One of our results in going for the grant, hiring that additional 6, like I said, it would give us the 4 shifts of 4. It would be NFPA compliant for 1710. That's in career staffing. It meets the safety standards for fire ratings for having 2 individuals in while there's 2 out to back them up in case something happens. We'd have the medic service in town in general. That's a much greater service to the town, to the residents, like I said, for diagnostics, medications, making the appropriate decisions on facilities to transport them in a much quicker time frame. And as a cost savings, during the day, if people were out on vacation, each shift we'd be able to run down 1 during the day, as the deputy and myself would be able to cover that shift. We'd make sure they were running full at night, but we would have that flexibility during the day as a cost savings. The capital costs to do the hiring of that magnitude, the gear's $12 grand, $160,000. That's a one-time fee for both ambulances. That would outfit the ambulances for the ALS service, refrigeration unit, heart monitors, different methods to give medication, software upgrade. It would include the cost for training at the fire academy for those 6 individuals. And we also included the cost for EMD, which is emergency medical dispatch. That's about
$350 a person.
$350 a person, so that would cover that initial cost for the training. And on top of that, it would need a review of time as far as how dispatch would handle that and being able to do it. So total capital for that would be one-time cost, $209,800.
Which could be funded out of the accumulated balance and ambulance receipts at this point.
Okay.
There's a
Right,
savings
that's
that's
what we're
been
talking about.
accumulated, over the years.
Yep.
Now, this wouldn't apply to, the grant wouldn't apply to this stuff here?
Correct, it would not.
It's outside of the grant.
Yes. Yep.
The grant is just salaries.
Salaries and benefits for those 6 individuals. I learned from last time, so I can give you guys numbers after I talk, that way.
So we aren't staring at the numbers.
That's right.
So you have in there training for current dispatch. What is that?
That's correct.
Are we looking at a future, another hire for another dispatch? Would that be something?
That potential is there.
I've got it.
Trust me.
reserves. All right, capital costs aside, there are two sides, all right? If you look on the fine print underneath the ALS on the top left, it'll say with or without the SAFER grant, all right? Let's just start right off with the SAFER grant, okay? As you guys requested from last time, we laid it out quarterly. This basically takes all of the current, it's based off of the current revenue from ALS and BLS calls, assuming that we would take over the whole service. It shows the gross profits, which is in the green, going across the board from FY 18 and 19 and 20, where you would see the 100% coverage of hiring those 6 medics, going into the medic service. As you go further down, 20 into 21, where the town picks up the cost, or where the revenue covers the cost of those medics, you can see the decrease of revenue coming in. That does not include the average of $300,000 budget offset, which if you went down to the next level, just above the blue, 2 lines above the blue, there's $75,000 a month accounted for the current budget offset per quarter. So it's roughly $300,000. It's $300,000 a year.
Scott, the total revenue projections are based on current?
It's based off of the current revenues taken in. We use the last 6 months based off that, and it goes up 2% a year. On top of that, our run volume increases every year. It's roughly been going up 100 calls per year. Downtown, Emerson Hospital has an urgent care facility going in. By checking out or paying attention to Westford, they have Lowell General urgent care facility. It's a significant increase in their run volume, and we would anticipate that just with that facility alone, not including anything, the additional of households coming into town.
What's the expected timing of that?
Next summer.
facility? Next summer?
Next summer.
So refresh my memory, the billing company that you have now, the projections are based on that. Were you planning to stay with the same billing company?
So currently, Professional Ambulance is our ALS provider.
Yeah.
They're, like I said, based out of Emerson or based out of Cambridge. They currently do our billing, our training, provide our ALS service, and keep all of our records. So it's a little bit of a challenge to actually get our records from them. Right now, unfortunately, we're in a group contract with the whole district, and we have all of our eggs in one basket. If we take over this service, or let me back up a step. One of the other issues with the service is a very poor collection rate. They're not aggressive in collecting the billing from this. What we would like to do is change to a different billing company, and in doing all of our research with the other billing company, their collection rates are roughly 92, 93%, and so there would be an increase on revenues coming in. We would go with that billing company for our ALS and our BLS calls. We would, with the capital, you would see some, the software costs. We would take over all of our own reporting. Everything would be in-house. We would not rely on the outside company any longer.
So is that reflected in this? At some point, there's a transition.
Can I interject real
Yes.
quickly? I'm
So
Kim,
this is-
I'm the executive assistant over at the fire department.
She's the boss.
We told her to introduce her first and forgot again.
So the BLS numbers that you're seeing there, the BLS revenue, that's based off of our current collections. The ALS revenue is based off of projections given to us by Coastal, which is the company that we would like to go with. after they analyzed the current numbers provided by professional ambulance.
Oh, I see.
Is that maybe?
Does coastal work on a commission structure? Is that why they're more aggressive?
They work on a 3.5% to 4% based on, that's their rate based on what they give us, yes. So it is a kind of a
It's not what they
commission.
build, it's what they collect?
It's what they collect.
And we have experience with coastal, right?
Yes, we do.
We used to go with coastal and had really good collection rate with them. And then when we went to the ALS service, when Emerson went away from the ALS, that's when that ALS group collections dropped off.
We also have excellent reporting with coastal. We had some difficulty getting some data, from the current provider, but coastal was very transparent.
What is your expectation, what percent confidence do you have on the SAFER grant?
Right now,
This is based on that.
I've reached out to an individual that I'm pretty comfortable with that has done many grants and has been very successful. I would have somebody else write that grant for us. This, and honestly, the 6 is based off of the grant. It's kind of a no-brainer. Originally, we were going to ask for 5, but it just makes sense to go for the grant, go for the 6, cover the entire cost of that, and still be able to come out of it with a little bit of profit, a little bit more revenue coming in, and a little bit better than breaking even. So yes, basically this front sheet is based off of the hopes that we would get the SAFER grant. If we did not get the SAFER grant, on the backside, that would go back to, we would not do a reorganization within the department. We would go for 5. That would put 1 paramedic on every shift. There would be a promotion to lieutenant on every shift, and that would give us 1 medic swing person, which would work days basically, and fill the first vacancy out. With that, there is a cost to the town, right through, and profits and loss. First year, it's going to cost roughly $180,000. And then incrementally, it's going to go down from there. And that is a cost for an improved service without a grant. And honestly, we seriously need to consider that, whether we have a grant or not, simply for that ALS service. To have that service in town at a much quicker time frame is crucial. And for us to provide that to our residents, it's a service that, that can't be beat.
Chief, did you run the numbers for fiscal year '21 without the SAFER grant? It's not on here, but you show 21 with, but you don't show anything.
Because there's the one without, it'll continue to go up. The revenue would continue to grow up, or to go up.
So it
It's
would
just
be something
basically-
north of 36K.
Yes, yep.
But not appreciated.
It just shows the first 2 years being that cost,
Right on.
cost to the taxpayer. And so from 20 on, we're in the green.
Just digging into these numbers a little bit more, in '21, of course, we're looking way out. Q2, you show a loss here. Why is that? I mean,
That's
everything
gonna be
else
the
is-
second quarter.
everything else is
Yeah.
looking- everything else
Kim will
is looking
explain
great.
that.
Historically, the second quarter has been lower as far as our collections, and we just, for the last 3 fiscal years, it's stayed that way. Quarter 2 is low, quarter 2 is low, quarter 2 is low. So we continued that trend out because it's a continued trend, so we continued it on out for this purpose, because we're not gonna give you an unrealistic number, so.
Did we see that with coastal?
I didn't analyze it, it was the 10-year.
Yeah, it was 10 years ago.
So that's been the trend, but we don't know exactly why, right?
That could improve.
It could be because of the holidays, you're not doing as many transfers. There's a lot of different reasons. The collections for the insurance companies are typically down. They shut down for the holidays for a couple weeks, so that can push everything out for a couple weeks. So there could be a few different reasons.
How far out from Littleton do we have mutual agreements to use, that they would be able to access our ALS?
So currently Westford and Air provide an ALS service. In preliminary discussions with them, we would sign agreements, we could sign agreements with all of our surrounding communities that we could offer them a backup ALS service. So that is not accounted for in this, and that would potentially be an increase in run volume and revenue. But in the discussions with Air and Westford specifically, they, being a fire-based ALS service, they look favorably of having another fire-based ALS service being their backup.
Acton's going ALS, right?
That's correct.
They're in that process
Their
now.
union has voted to go ALS. They're looking at roughly a year out. If they can get that, then again, we're kind of on the island alone. ALS is providing on service, all of their services east of Acton, and we would be, they'd be jumping over to Acton to offer that service to us. And as it is now with the delays, there's a significant amount of the time we cancel them because it's not worth waiting for the paramedics to get here. We could be halfway or three-quarters of the way to the hospital before they even get here.
And once you apply for a safer grant, what's the lag time before you know whether you get it or not? 3 months, 6 months?
About
a
6
year?
months.
Right. Last.
6 months?
6 months.
It's a federal grant.
Yep.
So it opens, it gives you a period of window to apply, and they give you a ballpark on when they're gonna start awarding the grants. So, but
This past year, it was February that the grant opened, and they're doing it right now.
So is there any criteria that would favor Littleton over another community?
Actually, yes, and part of that criteria, there's two major components. One is the fact that we would meet the NFPA 1710. It's a significant safety standard in the NFPA's eyes, so we would meet that. And not only that, but we would change our service going from a BLS service to an ALS service. So it's a significant service change to the community. So those are two components that would definitely look more favorable to in the grant.
This billing service, what's it cost us per year? Or is it just, because I'm just looking at, does any of your figures take into account that you're no longer having to pay somebody for a billing service?
And we
So
still
the-
are.
You still have coastal though?
We'll have coastal.
Yeah.
Do you want to try to answer that, Bonnie?
Right now, the way that Pro works is they take all of the ALS revenue, and we keep the BLS revenue. So if there's a call that is an ALS call, we might respond initially and start transport, and then they run the ALS intercept. They get the revenue for that call, because it's an ALS call, even though we've transported and we've provided some level of service. If it's a BLS call, we get all of that revenue. So this is just a percentage of the collected revenue. It's more easily analyzed. Right now, I depend on Pro EMS to provide me with what their ALS call costs are. I don't have information on that. Whereas if we're collecting everything, I have all of the information. And I can.
So there's probably dollars in there, but there's no way to really know.
Right.
Until we get started doing it.
Correct.
Exactly.
And I think you mentioned this last time, but I'm old and I forget. What is,
Nobody called you on that, did they?
thank you, Alan. What is the percentage of BLS to ALS runs?
ALS right now is about 54%. Actually, it's less than that.
It's 45%
Yeah.
that we're calling for ALS.
And in the surveys with Westford and Air, their average was roughly 64% once they did their switch over and went to ALS. So they initially, their first year, they had a little bit more of a surge, and then once their first year settled down, they roughly 60% of their calls were ALS. So it's, like I said, right now, we sit there and debate whether, okay, do we wait for them or not? And on many occasions, we cancel them because it's not worth the wait.
That's where you're
So we'll
going.
transport. But if we had the service, we'd be working these patients up. So right now, we need to make that decision. Is it worth the gamble to let's beat feet to the hospital or wait for the paramedics? And sometimes it's necessary to leave.
So it's not just a financial, it's a life safety issue.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Tonight, prime example, they had a call on Foster Street, the ALS signed up from Lincoln at 5 o'clock. So when they had the patient in the ambulance and they're getting ready to go and they wanted to know where they were, they just passed paparazzi. And they're getting ready to go to Emerson, so they're gonna intercept somewhere in Acton. You're talking about, if it's a critical situation, you don't wanna be the one in the back of the, I mean, it is what it is.
Yep.
We can't control where Pro keeps the truck, but when Acton goes ALS, they're gonna go to one truck, and that truck is gonna be in Lincoln, and they're gonna be in Concord all day. And they're gonna tell us they're not available, we don't have a truck for you, and then we gotta call all around, because Westford and Air are not gonna be our primary ALS, they will not do that for us.
And as a matter of fact, it happened the other day with a critical patient that was transported to Neshoba. They met them en route on their way to Air. They caught up to them. They hopped in the back and said, okay, just drive. Now, as they're backing into the hospital, they realized that, hey, we should have went to Lowell because this person needs a cath. He's having a major heart issue. He is where he got treatment there, but he could have been at the appropriate facility if the service was immediate.
We can't do that now.
Yeah, there's no way for us to tell, other than saying, they look bad,
Yeah.
But that's not our choice. The ALS service can determine that and make those decisions.
And Bonnie, the $640,000, that looks like this will generate
Yeah,
for the first 2.5 years, that just goes into the reserve fund for the service.
well, the grant is offsetting.
Right, but it, because of the grant, it generates significant cash flow in the first 24 months, 26 months.
Right. It could mean
And that
that
cash
we could
is,
reduce the budget offset. In those given years, we were pumping in 300,000, from ambulance receipts, we could, mitigate that and leave it there to accumulate in those given years, just to manage
Right.
it. And build up a balance if we wanted to do that. The only thing I'm looking at here, and the chief has been wanting me to look at it, I just haven't had a chance to kind of go through these numbers. I see, the projected increases for the revenues, I don't see any increases on the billing rates.
Right.
They're minor, these are, not gonna be material or
Right.
big changes. And I don't see any projected increases on the salaries, and we know that there are, there's increases that need to be programmed. So we might need to tweak a little bit of that to just see what that does, and then we can play with the budget offset and see where we might land with the reserve balance. But, it's a great cash flow model, I think it's very effective.
but it's a
Showing
short-term cash flow.
Correct.
So that's my only point, is that somebody doesn't see it and decide there's $200,000 a year that we can do something with. It's $200,000 for a couple of years, which is not a bad thing. And then it goes down because the SAFER grant goes away. So, we can think of it as maybe building up capital reserve for the fire department or something for the fire department. But out here, it's really little more than break even.
This is not general fund money anyway, it's gonna go into the fire account.
Well, the
Not-
ambulance receipts go into its own account, and then we
Yeah.
appropriate it out of it
Right.
annually to offset the
So
budget.
it's like a revolving account.
Right, right.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I was trying to say.
And I want to make sure that that's the way we're thinking of it.
Yeah.
It's really, it's a great story financially, but there is a cliff. So-
Short term, it's great, yeah, long term.
Well,
The
the
service
service, you
is-
get the
But it's more
increased
than
service.
financial.
Yeah.
Get the increased service, you get additional people, which
Absolutely.
gives you the ability to go to more shifts. So you have
Gives
more
us
people
4
volunteer.
people per shift,
Any-
right.
Any shift, you get more equipment out, so there's all sorts of those things.
Yeah, I think this isn't designed to be, you know, a moneymaker for the general fund. It's supposed to be enhanced service. You get paramedic intercept in Littleton rather than in Concord.
Right, exactly.
Well,
Which will matter greatly
but
to you if you're in the back of the ambulance.
But it
Absolutely,
pays for itself.
absolutely.
Right.
But
Generates a few bucks.
it's not, you know,
With the grant, it's
Yeah.
not a drain.
and without the grant, if the grant doesn't come through, it's a $240,000 question. You know, is the increased service and the 15-minute cut or 20-minute cut in response time for somebody having a heart attack worth that kind of investment for the whole town? My personal vote would be yes, but with the SAFER grant, it truly, in my opinion, is a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer with the safer ground.
But it's not just heart attacks, it could be brain trauma or whatever.
Absolutely, it could be a stroke, it could be motor vehicle accidents, which we have an overabundance of those. You know, it's the traumas on the highway, everything. There's many things that the ALS service provides for.
Well, this is really a question for the selectmen at
Yeah,
this
I was gonna
point.
say,
Yeah.
public
This is,
safety.
this is a program, you report to the selectmen, right?
Yep,
But I wanted to see, everybody to see the financials. So we're either okay, you know, or we're saying, no way, we're there to support this kind of thing financially. And, you know, I don't want to speak for the group, but my personal feeling is if the SAFER grant comes through, it's really a financial no-brainer. If it doesn't, it's a human resources decision to make, which I personally would support a few pennies more a year on your taxes to do this, because it will break even over a couple of years.
Well, I'm glad you asked him for this, because it makes a difference in how I feel about it, because I was on the fence. But you got the numbers, you got the enhanced service. Yeah, makes sense.
I think you go back to my days when I was on the board select, you know, a lot of it was about public safety, and this is really, take the numbers aside, it's a public safety issue.
Absolutely.
And I think that, you know, that should come first, and if you can make the program work at a break even, or maybe put a few bucks in the pocket, then better.
So do you have are you scheduled to talk to the Wizard of Oz? Or?
Pilot program, you guys are the pilot program.
I wanted to see how this went and see, because if you were going no way, then it wasn't worth taking that next step.
You know, my only comment is, if I was the Board of Selectmen, I'd say, did you use an entire ink cartridge for this?
It's great, man.
We can adjust accordingly.
Get that black and white.
But really shouldn't anytime we ask the taxpayer to pay more, it should be for better service in general, right? As opposed to, well, whoops, we need more money because we don't have enough. This is something that I think as the town grows, and it's growing, that we need to be able to keep up, the PD, ourselves, we all have to keep up somehow and provide a level of service, and that when that second medical goes off, like Friday night, he and I are having dinner with our wives in air, and you're like, who's coming? And it was Aaron Westford covered that second critical medical that we had, because our ambulance was out at another one. And it's
Oh, so I see what this is all about, so you guys get more personal time back.
keeping the marriage together.
You know what?
Keeping the marriage-
That's an added bonus.
Yeah, keep the wives happy, that helps, you know. But-
That would be nice.
Didn't I bring that up at the last meeting? Just saying.
But what it does boil down to is still, you know, I think we talked about this when we when we went around the clock and added the 24-hour staff, was the constant, I don't know if burden is the right word, but on the call members, the call department isn't necessarily it's hit or miss. They may be there, they may not. It's just not as reliable 24/7 as it used to be. And
Well, I think
we're
we-
starting to feel that.
You ask more of them than you used to.
Yep, yeah, we do a lot more now. And there's a lot, the requirements to continue to belong.
You can't just
are-
volunteer anymore, you gotta be qualified volunteer.
Absolutely. That's why they all go to the academy for 6 months of their own time, on their dime. They volunteer for that. And then, when they successfully pass, then they're part of our membership.
Well, the possibility of a new fire station with this new service is, it seems natural that this would be something to do, you know. After seeing this, I agree.
Good. Anything else, Chief? Good. Great, thank you. I appreciate the effort you put into putting the P&L together, but I think it really paints the picture.
Chris, if I can, real quick. Just adding, you know, I've been obviously in public safety here now, I'm in my 35th year. The deputy bringing in, you know, we all, enhancing service is what this is about. You know, 2 weeks ago, I was the first one at one of the rollovers on 495. And I'm gonna tell you, if all of the administrative people that were working that day and everything else didn't show up, we would have been in real trouble, because it took, ALS was 20 minutes out, the state police were 20 minutes out, and, you know, I'm holding traction on a 3-year-old boy with someone else who I didn't even know, with recruits who happened to stop because they were on their way to EVOC up in Devons. You know, I can't stress enough that, you know, this community is a growing community, and that's the tough part here, is we all realize that people cost real money. But we can't provide the service without the staff. You know, you talked about dispatch. The chief and I are already gonna be coming back this year trying to talk about an overlap. You know, and I look at other communities around us, and I'll pick on the town of Air. It's a community that's about 3,000 people less than us. It just hired, and I'll pick on, their dispatch now runs, I believe, 2 people on the desk around the clock. I think they run 4 on a fire shift minimum.
4 hit.
4 on a fire shift minimum, and they have 3,000 less residents, they have no hotels, they have no mall being built, they have no large apartment complexes in their community, and, you know, and we're just, you know, I think, you know, speaking for my guys with the fire department, you know, I can't tell you how much.
Oh, sorry, that slipped out.
You know, when they originally went 24/7 for the fire department, how, you know, how that step was huge, and this step is just as huge. He's talking a 35% ALS rate now, which should be another 30%, is what they're saying to you. If these other towns around us are averaging 65% ALS calls, 30% of our patients are going in. I'm not saying they're not getting great service, but they're not getting the complete enhanced service they can. And I can't tell you how supportive I am of my, you know, my partner in public safety in this community. And, you know, it's just, I think the town, and I know you do, and I think everyone has to realize, though, that we are a growing community, and it does stress public safety greatly. And unfortunately, the days of, and it's the same with me with reserve police officers, those people are far and few between today to do that type of work. The call departments are, I'm not saying it's dying, but look at your numbers. It certainly is restricted, so.
I will,
Milk out the cow with that, volunteers.
Absolutely, and we discussed this morning. Chief brings up that crash on the highway. You know, being first on scene and utilizing the PD, we had 2 members from New York, from FDNY, that were driving by that helped us, as well as a Sudbury firefighter. And we would have been lost without them.
3
because
of us, me, myself, and 1 other member of
Yeah.
our ambulance was.
we were already on another call.
Yeah.
Our next engine to back us up was Westford. We had 1 call member come back to take a truck out there by themselves. So that's the middle of the day, and we're standing there waiting for Jaws to cut her out of the car. We had to wait till Westford got there. We didn't have the ability to have our equipment right there. So it's an issue, and we discussed that this morning to say, hey, this is the perfect case to bring up, where we don't have the support, and we're struggling with it.
Just going through a lot of growing pains right now.
Yeah, we are.
Make sure Chief goes with you to the selectmen.
This is a good dress rehearsal. Seriously, I mean, you work for the selectmen have to support it and bring it forward. I don't think from what you're hearing here, you're gonna run into much of any agita. So I put a full court press on them is my recommendation, just as an individual in town.
Thank you.
That's great, good presentation.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for putting the effort in on the P&L. I think that really tells the story.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Next time, I'm home early.
Okay,
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
thank you, thanks.
Get some dinner,
Bonnie,
huh?
you want to just give us a fiscal update and talk about the budget calendar a little bit?
Sure. So we have a fiscal overview I copied in your packet. It's from the selectmen's meeting last night, so it goes through the slides that Stephen had went through with you previous, so I don't want to hammer that point again. But we did, present that to the selectmen last night as an option. They want to discuss it again at the next meeting. They want to kind of process the information and review it. Basically, what we tried to do was look at all of the capital projects that are in some form of discussion or planning phase and see what that looks like when we put it into the financials. And then rather than just give them a problem and say, we can't do everything, try and come up with some kind of solution to maintain our capital and manage the debt.
I see, I got billing on here, actually. Wow.
So we presented it to the 3 members that were there last night. We need to come back and present it to the full board and give them a chance to process it. It's a lot of information. I know Steve went through it with you last time, but I did include the slides that we gave them.
This was very well done, by the way.
Steve did a fantastic job. I mean, we are
You
so
both did.
lucky
You both did.
to have him. He's just a wizard with Excel and just the whole debt management. So aside from that, what I wanted to do was give you the financial update for fiscal 2017 in the context that you're going to be planning on spending for the fall town meeting. So kind of behind all those slides is another memo that gives you, it's dated September 1st, and it gives you an update on the 17 operating budget, both on what's recurring revenue and what is one-time revenue. The main change is we have finalized state aid figures. When we left the town meeting in May, we had a small surplus of about $4,400. With the resulting changes in state aid, about half and half net school state aid and town state aid. We have an increase, now we have a budget surplus of $105,000, or about $101,000 increase.
Was that from like the cherry sheets, that kind of
Yes.
stuff?
Yeah. So of that, 52,000 is directly state aid.
State aid.
They call them cherry sheets because they used to be red.
It used to come in on cherry
Red
paper.
So about 52,000 of that is directly attributed to increases in school state aid, so that would be Chapter 70, charter in, charter out. It includes both the increase in revenues and the increase in any assessments that might result, so it nets the two together, so you have an actual impact to the operating budget. The other half is coming from non-school state aid, and that's about 49,000. That is considered recurring revenue, could be appropriated to operating expenses, could also be appropriated to one-time expenses or reserves. It's available. The school department last night did ask, they didn't formally ask because they haven't voted yet, but they indicated that they would look to ask for the 52,000 to be appropriated to the school department budget so that they could reduce the amount of school choice funds that they planned on spending in fiscal 2017, so I would expect that would be coming forward.
And I requested of Mike to discuss with the school committee that the dollar for dollar that they basically reduce the spending and increase their reserves by that much. Obviously, if they have to dip into the reserves for some emergency, that's what they're there for, but not just increase school spending by 52. And
So you've already had a discussion.
via emails, and I did discuss it with Darrell last night, and he was going to mention it at the school committee meeting.
Okay.
So, okay, so that's where we are.
Get on that, get with him.
Yep.
So the other thing that's available for the fall town meeting is we have some one-time funding that's remaining from the snow and ice deficit that we had planned for. Last fiscal year, we had no surplus snow and ice money. This year, we had significantly less snow. We had planned for a $450,000 deficit. Again, we used it all last year. We only used a net of about 10,000. We actually used 50. We got about 40,000 back from FEMA. So there's a net deficit of 10, which means there's $440,000 that could be appropriated for one-time expenditures, because we don't know what snow and ice is going to do next year. So we can't add it into the operating budget. At the meeting, or prior to the meeting last night, there were some discussions about potential capital articles. The first one was for the self-contained breathing apparatus that the fire department had requested last year. It's a $300,000 cost. We appropriated $15,000 at the annual town meeting in hopes that we would get a grant for the balance. We were notified that we did not get the grant, but we're going to go back and try again. So this request is withdrawn. So this $285,000 is not going to appear on the warrant at this time. It may come back in the May town meeting, if we don't get the second grant request, but we're going to give it another shot. Other items that are in discussion is the comprehensive needs assessment for recreation fields. The cost estimate is being developed now. I don't know, what that would come in at, but I'm assuming it's, not going to be a $10,000 item. It's probably going to be, somewhere 50 maybe, I don't know.
I think that came out, that was, and I could be wrong, when we were doing our AFRAC meeting, and Tom Irwin was going to do kind of a needs assessment, and said we could do a needs assessment.
This is something that
this
Park and Rec
different?
specifically submitted a request to the selectmen for long-term planning for all of the fields,
Right,
not
got it.
just
This is
alumni.
different. This
Just
is
to kind of
different.
take
Got it.
a look.
So it could be about 50.
Yeah, ballparking. Town government building space needs assessment. This specifically would address the need for seniors, Park and Rec space. We're developing a cost estimate on that. It's been a number of years since we've done one. The last one was for this building several years, like 10 years ago, when we reused some of the space in here. And then the Littleton Common Sewer Strategic Plan, again, another cost estimate is being developed. And it's just about looking at the common area again for sewer and seeing if there's any action that can be taken out of the feasibility study that was done several years ago. What's the next step?
So is the sewer feasibility study committee behind this, or?
No, this is something that the selectmen have as part of their goals. So it's something that is driven from the board. That sewer committee, I don't think is active at this point, so.
I know, I'm on it.
Yeah.
For the master plan.
I haven't attended a meeting in years.
I think they flushed it.
So those are three things that are being looked at for some one-time
You could read that down, could you?
expenses.
But at this point, there are no articles in their list of articles for any of these.
No, there aren't. I'll go through the warrant at the end of it.
Okay.
The other items that are in discussion, and some are being talked about for the warrant, are community preservation potential projects. In particular, there's two parcels. One is the MBTA parcel on Boxborough Road. That's, the Mass DOT parcel on Boxborough Road for $205,000. And then kind of across from that one is the Williams property. And that's estimated at $1,170,000. So I was asked to see, can we fund it out of CPC? What's it look like? How does it look? We could, at this point, with the balances, we've been appropriating blended funds into CPC now for 2 years, so there is an accumulated balance that could be tapped. You can see from the memo there, there's about $1 million, $1,050,000, between open space and CPA undesignated. That's accumulated and unappropriated. Now, of the CPA undesignated, $200,000 of that is earmarked specifically for active recreation. So unless these parcels were gonna have active recreation, we can't use that. I'm gonna assume that they're not, so we can take that off the table. So my recommendation, if those accounts, if those parcels were gonna be acquired, would be to pay cash or a direct withdrawal from the open space account of $205,000 for the Mass DOT parcel, and then do a combination of short-term borrowing and cash withdrawal for the Williams property. And what I'd like to do is take $470 in cash out between the open space and the undesignated, and then borrow $700,000 in short-term, probably 5, maybe 5 years, somewhere between 3 and 5, and pay that down annually. That's what we did for the Church Meadows parcel, and this is our last year paying it. So that debt service payment that you see, the $155, that'll go away next year, significantly.
And that
be
can
reduced,
roll
and
against
then we
the-
can use
right.
it for the next parcels.
Okay.
We've been successful doing that. That would still leave about $200,000 in unearmarked funds in CPC if there were another project. It doesn't incorporate any of the appropriations that we're looking to put in this year. So we have another $400,000 plus that we're looking to pump in either between the fall town meeting or the May town meeting. So there'll be more going in. It doesn't incorporate the state match that will be coming in. So, you know, it is conservative. It leaves some room.
In the ballpark size of the state match you would expect this year?
Well, we got 39% last year, you know, so we got 267,000 last year from the state match. So if we got the same, it would be significant.
Okay, so even if it fell in half of that, it's still 140, 150,000, right? Okay.
How much are the taxpayers contributing to the CPC fund each year?
1%.
1%, but how much in dollars?
It's about 240,000.
A year.
And there's a commercial component now to that, right?
Yes, that includes the commercial.
Okay.
And there's
Well,
other
well,
formulas
well,
behind that. There's
well,
100,000 exemption
Well,
on.
plus the blended funds,
Right.
because the blended funds could be used for something else.
Right,
Right.
like the cell tower.
Right.
Well, the cell tower funds, or, you know, if we have, you know, free cash, or we have.
Other mitigation
Other
funds.
mitigation.
15 Great Road has been a big,
You know, we slide that in there. So, it's being used for town stuff, but it is money that's coming out of the, in effect, out of the taxpayer's pocket, because we could use it for this, or we could use it for that. But once you put it into CPC, you narrow down what you can use it for.
It just seems like there's a lot of money in there, right? $1 million in the account?
that's because for the last 2 years, we've done the 2% match. So if the taxpayers are putting in, you know, 240 from the from the surcharge, and we're adding another 480.
Yeah.
Right,
You
to
know,
get it up to
annually.
3%, because that puts you into the
What we put in is
39%.
almost 3% now.
So it did accumulate, I mean, we almost drained the account.
Yeah, I remember.
2 years
It
ago.
was a
And
few
then
years ago, we had like
2 years.
nothing in there.
But the blended fund trick is really what's built this up.
And then the state match. So we put in, you know, the 240 from the surcharge, and then the 480 from the blended, and then we got 267,000 from the state. So it was,
It's like investing your free cash.
I can't get 39%.
Getting a return on
so.
No. Jeez.
Seems like a
Good
Ponzi
deal.
scheme, doesn't it?
One of these days, they're gonna catch up to it.
But it works.
Well, that's, you know, I was in the
Take
CPC
advantage of it when you can.
Yeah, well, it's here. So that is the financial update, and then there is an update included in there for, it's labeled joint boards meeting. It's got the warrant. So the first page is, it's got the warrant kind of deadline and town meeting deadlines. Just as a reference, because it's helpful to see The town meeting report, you can see here, it needs to go to the printer by the 27th of October, which means all of your recommendations need to be in there at least a day or two before that, so that we can finalize the document and
Okay.
get it into the format that we need. And then special town meeting is still planned for November 16th. So the list of warrant articles are here. The ones that are in bold are articles that the Board of Selectmen have voted to insert. They have not voted to recommend or not recommend, but they're inserted. The items that are not in bold font are talked about, but they're not inserted as of yet. So, as Fred mentioned, Article 5, which would be the supplemental 2017 capital items, they've been talking about them, but the article is not formally inserted yet. If the Finance Committee wanted to, you could start taking votes whether you recommended or didn't on the bold-faced articles, or you can wait.
And under Article 5, the self-contained breathing apparatus is struck.
Right, that's the one that the fire department withdrew. At this time, they're gonna try for another grant.
Okay, all right,
So that's off the table.
it is for this round,
Yes.
but maybe come back in May.
Right,
Okay, all right,
we're gonna give it another shot.
okay.
So in this, it was updated from the previous week. So we have bills of prior year. I may have one bill. I'm trying to find a way to not have one bill, but I'm working on that. Typically, if we insert the article and if there's no bills, then we take no action on it. We just withdraw it at the floor. Article 2 is to amend the classification and compensation plan to adjust for any minimum wage requirements coming down from the state, the $11 an hour minimum. We have to make some changes to our grid to accommodate that, particularly with Park and Rec. It's their grid.
Small amount.
Article 3 is any fiscal 2017 budget adjustments, so if there were an appropriation to change the school department amount, we would do it in here. If there were any other transfers, we would do this here. If we replenish the reserve fund, we can either incorporate it here or by including it in the capital article changes when that gets inserted. Either way. It'd probably be easier in Article 3 with the budget adjustments, but we can talk about that.
Okay, well, I would request that we replenish it to the amount, close to the amount that we.
I don't think that's gonna be a problem. I mean, I
Okay.
think they've been working really hard with the projects, and I think they're fine.
That's fine.
So, debt exclusion stabilization fund, this was some of the discussion that we had last night in talking about seeding that debt exclusion stabilization fund with the $2.5 million that was put into the capital stabilization fund and managing that with the project. So it's in there. We could, you could recommend the funding be transferred. If there's other one-time funding, if there's a piece of the snow and ice money that were remaining after the appropriations, we could put it in there to seed it, to start it, or not. But again, it hasn't been inserted yet. Capital articles from available funds. We do have an update on the public safety communications. In the final budget, Littleton did receive $50,000 from the state for public safety radio upgrades. The total cost of the upgrades is $100. It was originally in there for $100, and then it got cut in for $50, the final versions of the state budget. So the other $50 would be requested to complete the project appropriately. The police chief is writing up, he just got back from vacation, so he's going to be writing that up and submitting the detail to you on what that encompasses. The comprehensive needs assessment for recreation fields, again, we talked about that. The town government building space needs assessment, I mentioned that, and the common sewer strategic plan. We also have the fire station facility expansion, construction, which would include authorization to rent temporary fire headquarters. That's estimated at the $8.87 million that's been talked about, so that is inserted. The alumni field renovation construction, that's estimated at $2.35 million. Rescind unused borrowing authority. This is the $270 I mentioned from the Church Meadows purchased through CPC. So we authorized the borrowing, we paid it off short-term, we never placed it permanently, so we can rescind it at this point, because we paid it off. Blended Community Preservation Act supplemental appropriations. This can either go in the fall or it can go in the spring. As long as it goes in before June 30th, that's all the state cares about. If you put it in, and then take it out in the following article, they don't care. It's just getting it in
As long as
before
it's
June
in there and they
30th.
can document it, right?
Right, so this may not get inserted. There was some discussion last night about it might maybe just wait until, the Springtown meeting. Mill Pond Restoration Feasibility Study, supplemental funding. This is for the Mill Pond dredging project. This would come directly from the Spec Pond cell tower funds. It is available. It's just the recalculated cost for the Army Corps of Engineers project. But yeah, it's just, the estimate that they had previous was pretty old, so. Articles, the next group is requiring, I can't even talk, requiring supermajority votes. So this is, 11 was not inserted yet. It's an article for 9 acres of donated property. We need to get the final legal document from council just affirming that it's a donated parcel, so they don't want to insert it until we have that completed. 34 Cedar Road, this is something that the water department is looking to acquire, and they're going to bring forth, Scott already said today he's going to bring something at the next meeting to give you an update on it. I'm not really sure what it's
Buying
about.
neighboring property or something?
The neighboring property to the old tower, because the DEP will require that even if we bring that tower back online, it only has some number of years of useful life in their vernacular. So he would propose to build a new tower beside the old tower and then take down the old tower.
Is there a building on that property, or is it open land?
I don't know whether there's one of those small houses. Yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you.
And the plan on this would be to fund this out of the water department
Right.
enterprise fund, available funds. Here's the surplus, the Mass DOT parcel for $205,000 I mentioned from CPC funds, and the 31 Boxborough Road, or the Williams property, at $1.1 million. We did advise CPC that we're going to need them to look at these for support last night, so more work needs to.
Yeah, that's on our agenda for the CPC meeting on the 21st. And basically, we're the banker, and the town comes in with this kind of program for the most part. It gets supported, but conservation land is sucking it dry, basically. So, the little bit that you legally have to put into housing or historical or recreation is really piddling compared to the draw that conservation has pulled out of there, or will have pulled out of there. Okay.
The draft for Article 15 would be to revisit this parcel, this campus that includes the middle school, the Russell Street School, Town Hall, tennis courts, library. Right now, as it sits in deed from 1920-something, Town Hall is controlled in the care and custody of the school department.
Well, it was a
It used
school.
to be a school.
It used to be a school, and it was never, typically you go to town meeting and you revote, it's surplus, and then some other department gets assigned it. That just never happened back in the 20s.
Paperwork to do.
So there's some discussion of, do we do this now, or do we bring it in the spring? So this may or may not get inserted, but that's what this is. It's about, drawing that line, and it also incorporates the library site, the proposed site, because if the school department would need to declare this surplus to the selectmen, and then the selectmen would further allocate it to, or indicate support for the library to take that piece. So there needs to be some survey work and final analysis on it. But I think that the school committee is looking at least initially voting the intent to, say that surplus with the final line being defined at some point in the future.
So, because we didn't do our homework years ago and do it right.
Do
now
clean
we're
up
gonna
now.
be We're doing the cleanup now, we gotta pay for surveying to do that too?
Well, technically, it's funny, the selectmen have care and custody of the athletic fields, including part of the middle school, so, and again, it's
Yeah,
because of the,
There's a lot that needs to be done, it
It's
wasn't just this parcel.
You
It
know, it's like 5
should all
or
be
6
done at once.
gerrymandered parcels that are involved here, that, you know, historically, over time, get conveyed to
we just
the-
want it to be reflective of
It's
what
all
it
town,
actually is.
but
Yeah,
it's-
It shouldn't be this complicated.
I know.
It shouldn't be that complicated, we shouldn't have to pay money to have it surveyed either.
Well, you do have to have a survey.
Of course we do.
Yeah, when you go to the registry of deeds, they want it. And then there is the Article 16, which is inserted for restricting development for some tax title properties on Narcissus Road. Basically, these parcels are too big to fit in our abutters
Butters
tax
program.
title program. So the only thing that we could do to them is auction them, and without any restriction, which means if they're big enough to put a house on or something, somebody could. So the selectmen want to be able to get rid of these parcels because there are interests, but be able to deed restrict them so that no houses or structures could be built on them. The only way that we can do that is by getting permission from town meeting to do that. So the intent is to treat them like we do the tax title abutter program parcels and not have them developed, but be available to abutters for septic systems or, you know, something that is, you know, in need by an adjacent property. So that's the intent behind this.
Aren't they all pretty much, if I remember correct on the map, they're all right next to each other?
Yes.
So, it's up, it's across from, I guess across from Lake and Woodland, and between Park,
Oh,
Lake and
okay.
Woodland. It's kind, it's a really, it's almost looks like someone's driveway. It's a private road, isn't it? I don't think it's paved.
I think so.
Is it
Between
way back,
Maplehurst
is the
and,
lights out?
Narcissus is
The
accepted.
Christmas lights? Is it down that street?
No, it's on the other side. It's on the left-hand side if you're going up Goldsmith. So
Oh,
it's
got it.
Laurel, Maplehurst, Narcissus. I think
Oh, right,
is,
right.
If you're going up.
Yeah.
Memory serves correct. Where's the map? It's on the map.
Moving right along.
Okay.
So
But-
the other.
So back to my question I guess I had about this. So why, if they're all together, how could an abutter use that? Just looking at selling it all as one big lot?
Well,
Combining them?
because they're too big for the tax title abutter program,
Yeah, I understand that.
all right, so the abutter could use it for open space, just a buffer between, you know, whatever, they could use it for their lawn clippings, however they wanted to manage it. But if they had a septic system issue, they could use it for that.
But if they
If the
don't
property's
purchase it
worth more,
and the township owns it, they're not paying tax on it.
Right.
So why,
And
what's the
there's no
incentive
use
to
for these.
purchase it?
We don't want, these parcels don't serve any use by any of the other boards, like conservation or, you know, recreation. They're not parcels that are useful. We'd like to get them off our books. We've had interest from abutters
Okay.
in the parcels, so we want to be able to offer that, but we don't want to, we want to make sure that there's not a house that's going to be built on it.
actually, I guess I'd go the other way. I said, if the land's worth more, we're taking the value out of the property and giving it away essentially, because the tax program
No,
is
they're
small.
not going into that program. We will actually set a minimum bid on these, and they're bigger, so we will set the bid at the appropriate amount. I mean, we have assessed values on
But
them
if you
now.
can't build on it, they're really not worth that much, so it's
Right.
only worth something to an abutter,
Right.
in theory.
Right.
So you might not get that much money for it anyway.
We're getting nothing for it now.
No, I understand, but what I'm struggling with is why you'd want to put a restriction on the property versus just selling it and say, let somebody build a house on it if they wanted to.
Because somebody could buy all 4 of them and build a house.
Right. And
Oh, Okay, what's
So
the
what?
issue with that?
the selectmen didn't want that.
That's, there you go.
I guess that's it.
Other articles, we are in
Depends on the dollar versus getting a.
We are in discussion with the selectmen about some bylaw amendments regarding the town administrator and the Department of Finance and Budget. I did provide the update in here to kind of go through, give you some context behind it, but The impetus, I guess, is me. I'm just looking for some relief in the department, and I have a lot of things on my horizon in the next 5 years. I need to do a software conversion, which is, the last time we did one was 10 years ago. I need to look at cloud-based, solutions. The last time we did one, it took a year, because we're all on the same system. So it's, accounting, finance, collections, assessor, treasury functions. So that's going to consume a tremendous amount of my time. I am consumed a lot with non-financial duties that I need to try and relieve myself of. A lot of personnel management, just assistant town administrator duties, I would call them. So I'm trying to get that off of my plate as much as I can. In addition, I know that Steve Benuti and Ann have indicated that they will be here maybe 2 more years, and then, probably not. I am, unlikely to get a treasurer of Steve Benuti's caliber. So I know that I'm going to be pulled back into the finance department, which I prefer. I like being in the finance department. The duties of the assistant town administrator have grown tremendously and consume more than 50% of my day at this point, and I have a log to show for it. So I need to look long-term and figure out how am I going to manage this, and I don't want to fail. So that's the bottom line. I need to get these duties off. So we've come up with this plan of looking at a true assistant town administrator that really deals with the operational aspects of the town, and letting me focus on the financial management of the town. So it's still in discussion. We're going to brief the board again next week. I'm sorry, the next meeting on the 26th. Again, they only had 3 members last night, so we need to go through that. And I just wanted to give you just the overview of that. There'll be more to follow. And then Article 18, or proposed, is, actually, they did insert this one, to establish the other post-employment benefits liability trust fund, which was included in this year's round of Municipal Modernization Act, so we want to get on board with that.
And what does that do?
It actually establishes a formal trust for the...
For OPEB?
Yes.
So it's not addition to OPEB, it's just formalizing it?
Formalizing, yes.
Okay. Because I was trying to figure out what other...
Yeah, we have the account, we need to,
Yeah.
interest it in the
All right.
trust. So that's where we stand at this point. I don't really see anything else on the selectmen's horizon to insert. There are, I think, 3 citizens petition articles in some format being tossed around. One of them was to require that any amount over $250,000 be voted by ballot and checklist, which we need to figure, out what that means. Is it any line item in the budget that's over 250? Because that's going to make a long town meeting. And then one of them was for any item that's $1 million or more for a capital item to be voted by debt exclusion. And then there was another one on providing the information that's in meeting packets online immediately. So we're working with town council. The Board of Selectmen said last night, just start working with town council to see if some of these just are not legal. We don't want to get to town meeting with an article that can't be enforced, is in conflict with state law or, something like that. The moderator also indicated support of that.
Tim was the one that
Yeah.
brought that up. He was concerned that people would get there and whatever they wanted to do wouldn't be within the 4 corners of the town laws, so.
So we will work with town council and figure out, what may appear actually on the warrant, but we'd rather have clean language. And I think that's that.
I think the moderator's point on that was very well taken.
Absolutely.
Because you get people whose expectation is this is going to pass, and once it passes, then you tell them, well, you can't do it because
Can't do it anyway.
it's not in legal format. And that just makes people mad at it.
Yeah, you might as well.
Yeah.
Save them the headache and do the research ahead of time.
Okay, plan on maybe going through these at our next meeting, and any of them that we have enough information on, we can sort of vote, so we're not trying to vote on the 18th of October. Going through the whole If that's okay with everybody, I'll put that on the agenda.
Couple at a time.
Sort of go through it. Okay. Okay, Bonnie, anything else?
No.
Oh, the budget calendar is the same as we had put out
Has not
before,
changed.
and we haven't done any changes to that at
It's
this
still in
point.
line with the fall town meeting and.
Great. Okay, and I did hand out hard copy of the department assignments. And there are a few changes from last year, but it's what we had just talked about at our last meeting. I'm having trouble with the new Windows 10. When I tried to attach this Word document to it, it just gave me nothing but gibberish in the attachment. But if I went back to Word, I could see it and print it out. So I'm probably pushing the wrong button, but that's why you get hard copy. If I can figure out how to send it to you, I will, but everybody has it at this point, okay? I didn't share it.
What's the timeline for these?
Last year, we said try to do it during the month of October, between September and October. But we've moved out Super Saturday to
January.
after the first of the year. So October, November, by the end of November, make sure you get to all the departments. And, well, the one, we have a retirement in the cemetery, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, we did.
So-
Frank Sullivan.
So who do we,
The position's being posted.
Okay.
We had some minor changes to the job description, so it's going to the personnel board for final viewing and grading and making sure that nothing really changed with the grade.
so we should just talk with the cemetery commissioners?
Yeah, I would, talk to them about it. They did request that it be posted. They are also looking for kind of an administrative change. They voted at their last meeting to have the new superintendent position supervised by full-time staff here. So by the town administrator or his designee, which is what we do for a lot of other departments like conservation, council on aging. We've got a handful of them that are agreed like that. And it just provides some consistency so that if there's an issue day to day, it can be managed by the full-time staff. Policy decisions still get made by the cemetery commission, but they're not here every day to supervise or oversee any operational issues that might come. And it gives some support to the cemetery. So that'll be going to the selectmen at their next meeting.
So I think Steve, the cemetery commissioner, the cemeteries, I think on your group.
Yep.
And Gary, I think, is joining you this year.
I've got
I'm sorry, no,
Tom.
Gary's
Yeah.
with Tom. Tom
Yeah.
is joining you, I'm sorry. So I'll just check with the cemetery commissioners and see who you should talk to about the cemetery. It's not a big deal anyway, but.
No, I think last year we just talked about a lawnmower,
Yeah.
and
There's a loader.
well, they did have a loader also.
That wasn't much.
Okay. If we just go around why don't we do minutes? We have one set of minutes that came out, and a few people, I think, got back to,
Yes, and then I resent it out the other day.
right, so we have
With the corrections and everything like that.
right, okay, so,
Is this from our last meeting?
it's from 16.
I'd like to have a discussion about the motion that I made to the Board of Selectmen regarding capital exclusions. So I made that motion based on the discussion that we had had as a group and not fully understanding the Fincom policy. I did some research, I reached out to Bonnie after our meeting, did some research on this. And what I looked at was section 21, item number 5. It talks about capital exclusions and special stabilization. And what it says is unless an alternative funding plan is developed, debt exclusion should be utilized when borrowing for major capital projects, such as new construction or major renovations to existing facilities. I was under the impression that, when I made that motion, that it was our policy that we must do that. We must go for debt exclusion. I don't know why I thought that. I probably should have done some more research on it. But I'd like to make an amendment to that with you guys approval that, if there isn't an alternative funding plan, then we should be looking at a debt exclusion versus saying we recommend that it should be a debt exclusion for every large capital project.
Well, we didn't, I think the motion was not every large capital
It
project.
said, do you want me to
Go
read
ahead,
it?
yeah.
Greg Champion moves to let the Board of Selectmen know it is the Finance Committee's recommendation that these large capital projects be put into an override debt exclusion that has to be voted on per the town's financial policy.
Okay.
Right, so not fully understanding the policy, this policy has got some gray in here, and I think, I misspoke by saying that our town's financial policy, although it says we should look at doing a debt exclusion for major capital projects, it doesn't say that we must. And I think we should make that change to say that if there is an alternative funding developed, then we should be following the policy, and we should be looking to borrow for major debt exclusion, for a debt exclusion. Does that make sense? Paul, per the policy.
No, I'm confused.
So the motion that I made was to say that the policy states that we're required to do a debt exclusion for major capital projects. That's not what the policy states. The policy states that if there isn't an alternative funding plan developed, debt exclusion should be utilized. So maybe, I'll throw it out, maybe we take a look at that.
Do
and
you
do
have
some
what we
more.
had before, Greg? Do you have a copy of it here? I have it right here.
Yeah.
To let the board know, it's the finance, that these be put into an override that has to be voted on.
Right, per the policy. But the policy, as we discussed in our meeting last week, and I misunderstood the policy as we discussed, I thought that the policy said we must do this, and it doesn't state that. The policy says if there isn't an alternative funding plan developed, a debt exclusion should be utilized.
So there could be more discussion.
So there could be more discussion on it, is basically, yeah, I think I might have jumped the gun in making that motion, so I'd like to amend that.
Your amendment would make Jim and Paul very happy.
Yeah.
Well, could you amend the motion that's been voted on?
Yeah, this was voted as,
I mean,
it had already been voted, and it was, Greg made the motion, and Betsy seconded, and the motion was voted on and was carried.
Parliamentary procedure, I don't know, but it just seems to me that you can't make a motion, have it seconded, everybody votes yes, and then come back at the minutes time
And
and amend it. There may be a way to do it by making a motion at this
A motion
meeting.
to amend, all right, so then,
Now, that's for this meeting, not in.
right, not for that.
That's what I'm getting at.
You
I know.
can't change the minutes.
Right.
There may be a way you
It's on the
can,
minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
So can we get clarification from somebody that knows what that?
I'm reading
Yeah,
it.
no, I mean,
It's clear, I'm verbatim.
No,
I wrote this down
I'm not
verbatim.
questioning that, but
It's not the same as what
we
thought
understood.
we
So
understood.
this is based on a recommendation to the selectmen, that's why that was carried.
Yeah.
So if the recommendations change, then we probably need to talk about that.
You schedule a new recommendation or, a new vote. That vote exists. There's nothing to prevent you from taking new votes
New
or
vote
revised
and say
opinions
that-
or.
Or a new discussion or something. But
Okay.
this one stays the way it is, am I correct?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
So from that standpoint, can we at least clear these minutes and then address that?
Address this,
Is that a fair point?
Sure.
Okay. Any other comments on the minutes of the August 16th meeting? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from August 16th.
Okay.
Second.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so you can post those minutes. Okay. I guess, again, an open meeting probably good here. If we don't have
Let's do this. Why don't we put this on our
agenda for next
agenda for the
time.
next time?
And then we can
And
talk
all
about-
I recommend that you look at section 21, item number 5,
And then we can-
capital exclusions and special stabilization, and read that point.
That's fine.
To make sure that we understand it, because it definitely reads differently than what we discussed in the meeting.
That's good.
And then I'd like to discuss that further. Yeah, that's cool.
That's fine. And whether, then we can look on an article by article basis as to whether we recommend override or not.
And it also opens up the discussion, should we have a threshold for these large capital projects where they probably should be an override? I mean, maybe this needs tweaking, but based on what I'm reading, I don't feel comfortable with the motion that I made, because it's different than what we discussed. And that's really what it boils down to.
From a finance director point of view, I think clarifying that language would be really helpful, because I read alternative funding plan as not general fund.
Right.
So like CPC, we spend millions of dollars on CPC acquisitions. We don't vote them on overrides, and I consider them funded alternatively because they don't impact.
I think that's
Yeah.
probably what was
What was meant.
meant
But
when we put this
having the
together.
language would be so much easier for me to.
I think that's the second part of this discussion, is maybe we look at tweaking this language to make it more clear, so that we all understand it better.
Okay, so, let's see, article,
Item 5.
Section 21, number 5, capital exclusions.
and,
And I can forward out the policies, because I got, Steve actually forwarded, when I contacted you right after the meeting.
yeah, if you can forward it out to the
Okay, to the-
committee, that'd be good. Yeah, discussion.
Everybody should have a copy of that anyway,
Yeah,
in your archives, your files, or something at home.
okay,
If not, get
Yeah,
one.
anytime you need one, just.
all righty. Anything else under member updates? Just go around the table, so Gary?
I'm fine.
Do you want an update on alumni? Just a-
Yeah, whatever, yeah, just a brief.
Just a quick, so it looks like there is a design company that has been selected, and we're going through they're going through the negotiation process right now, and hopefully we'll have contracts signed, I believe, next week. And
Well,
then-
PMBC has a special meeting scheduled for 6:30 on Monday, and we will be, I was unable to download the proposal today, but we will be voting, discussing and voting on the proposal on Monday night.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it'll be nip and tuck if we can get, the field.
Meaningful numbers, right?
Meaningful numbers for the November.
Okay. So worst case is it goes to the special in the spring.
That's right.
Best case is the numbers are available for the 17th. Okay.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, the number that would be available for special town meeting would be based on a schematic design, which is typically a 30% design. And when we asked the prospective successful firm how they felt about a schematic design estimate, they said that they are typically very close to the final design estimate. You know, that there is contingency built in there. So, you know, you can take that at face value.
Well, how about a not to exceed? I mean, you're gonna be asking the taxpayers for $2+ million. And I would think that, you know, traditionally, you go out bids in hand for a project of this size. And if we're not gonna have bids in hand, then it's a pretty big leap of faith that we're asking the taxpayers to take. And it's really deviates from our practice. And I don't think we have a written policy on it, but our practice has been to have bids in hand for major projects.
Well, I don't think we will for the fire station. We'll have a final estimate, won't we? We won't have
No,
a bid.
the plan was to have bids in hand prior to,
Oh, we will.
it's a tight,
That
you
is
know,
very
timeline
tight,
with it,
yeah.
but that,
It's tight.
So,
The book gets
I
published
think,
with the
all I'm saying
final.
is I think we should be consistent. And I understand that, you know, a lot of people are putting their hearts and soul into this thing, but we're sort of the financial conscience here for the town. And I think we should try to be consistent.
I'm just reporting on what we will have
Okay.
at that time.
What is the drop dead date? The warrant, just have that.
was it the 17th of October, 17th of October, is it?
6 weeks.
It's not much because
The report's going to the printer on October 27th, so we need to have the numbers like a day or two before that
Yeah.
to get it done.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, 'cause you can vote the article, but you gotta have it based on the
Right.
numbers.
yeah.
Because the booklet incorporates the motions, it's not just the article, so the motions have to be really crafted so that when we send it out, people know what they're,
What's the date of our October meeting? I'm just trying to line up. Yeah, we're gonna have another
see,
meeting.
we
somewhere.
have October 6th, October 13th.
Yeah, okay.
And the drop dead is, well, and we have slated October 6th and 13 on warrant recommendations. So we've got 2 meetings plus, we've got the meeting on the 22nd slated, that we could do some if we wanted to. And if we had to call a special for the 16th or 17th or whatever, if the numbers magically appeared, we could do that, I suppose, to try to, to support the program. But realistically, Steve, or, I mean, from your experience, are we going to have quality numbers at that point or not?
Well, this firm has done quite a few similar fields. They have a very substantial database, and they certainly have their pulse on the market. So I think that barring any drastic cost increases between preliminary or a schematic design and final design, it should be pretty close.
Okay. Okay, cool. Go get it. Just do your job.
Right.
That's all it takes.
The words of Bill Belichick.
There you go, boy. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Alan, anything? Okay. I've got one brief one here. The CPC presentation was made by the COA people came in, Pam Campbell, and what she is proposing is a housing rental voucher program for low-income families in town. And,
We funded with CPC.
yeah, and there are other examples of towns around that have used CPC funds for that under the housing leg of the stool, and it has passed muster. And what she's proposing is a pilot program for up to 10 families for a couple $100 a month stipend, if you will, to go towards their rent. The program would be basically managed by the Littleton Housing Authority. So they would be using the same criteria that they would use for somebody to get into low-income housing for these people that are actually paying rent to landlords. And they're coming back on the 21st to CPC and to make a more definitive proposal. But we normally opine on CPC motions. We agree, we don't agree. So it's just something for you to think about. And after we go through the process with CPC, I'll have Pam come in and actually discuss it, if it becomes a part of the article. But I just want to give you a heads up.
But what's the ballpark number?
It's like 39
$30,000 a year.
Yeah, that's chump change.
No, it's not a lot of money. It just seems like the CPC program, when I was on it when it first came online, was really geared for community preservation, and now it's moving into a rental program, rental subsidy for low income. Is that really part of CPC? Are we kind of losing what CPC is all about?
All I can tell you, and again, I've been on it for less than a year now, but all I can tell you is Pam, I think Chatham and 2 or 3 other towns actually have these programs, and it passed muster with the state in terms of what is within the chat.
Yeah, they've been doing it for
within the
several years
charter.
now, so.
Yeah.
And
So,
at least 10% of the CPC funds need to be spent on community housing. And currently, the only really projects that have come up have been repair projects for the housing authority. So this fits in that category. There is a 10% requirement reserved for that, so.
So it's, it was a bit of a stretch in my mind as well, but,
Yeah.
with the way she explained it. And there are some concerns, if somebody gets on the program, are they on it for life? Or apparently, the answer that came back on that was, they have to reapply every year. So if I get on it this year, because I've been down on my luck and I don't have any money and I get a better job and my tax return looks better next year, I might not get it next year. Or, if I get married or whatever.
There's specific criteria.
Yeah, there was a cap on it too.
Right, it's like,
It's to help you get upwardly mobile, you can't be on
It's
it
not well-
longer than 5
Oh,
years.
it's pretty low too.
So it's not for any seniors that are having problems paying their housing then, right?
right, no, it's not, right, so.
I know, but,
So, I mean, just, I'm just bringing it up to you to start thinking about it.
Interesting.
It's a program that, the Human Services Group is asking to run a pilot program on, see how it goes for a year, and then, either maintain it, flush it, grow it, I don't know. Okay?
Yeah, Fred, I did have something that I need to bring up from the personnel board side. We're going to go out and ask our consultant that we've had in the past for personnel issues to come in and give us a cost on redoing the classification and compensation review. We did this, the last one was 2012. So it's time now. We're hoping to do that through this fall and into the spring. So we'll be ready for the next round of the negotiations with the unions when those come up. And we'll be looking at all the jobs across town. It'll cover not just what other communities are paying on average, but also we're relooking again at all the job descriptions in town to be sure that what you do is reflected in your job description. Because jobs change over time, so we don't expect that to be as big a part of the process as it was in 2012, because we ended up rewriting just about every job description in town. We won't have to do that this time, but we do need to review them. But we will be looking across 12 to 15 comparable communities to see what salaries are attached to jobs and positions similar to what we have in town. And we'll be looking to do that for, FY18? So at some point, that will cost us some dollars. It always does. But that's out another year and a half. But we'll be starting that this year, and we've got the money set aside for it, so it's nothing that's gonna
So be
break
ready
the
for
bank.
annual.
Yeah.
We'll be ready for the annual.
Okay, I just noticed something on the schedule. My admin apparently made yet another typo here. I had Tuesday, the 22nd, and that's a Thursday, for our next meeting. I'd like to propose that it be Tuesday, the 27th
Tuesday, 27th
of September. And it's just a Tuesday. Rather,
I don't think I'm gonna be able to make that, me personally. I don't think I'm gonna make that.
Okay, so that'll be our next meeting.
I don't have any of that. Am I behind on your scheduling? I had Monday, September 26th.
That's a joint.
Oh, maybe.
That's a joint meeting with the
That's a
selectmen.
joint meeting with.
I'm one iteration back, huh?
Well, that's the budget calendar.
No,
That's the whole
no.
calendar.
Oh, that's your, okay, never mind.
This is the Littleton Finance Committee draft meeting schedule.
Okay, then maybe mine's off. Okay, maybe I picked up the wrong one. Can I say it? I'm sorry.
That's 2015, you got that correct.
Oh, okay, there you go. I just saw the 16, my mistake, absolutely my mistake. Okay, yep, September 26th with the selectmen, and then we're out to October 11th for the warrant. Okay, all right, my mistake, thank you.
Okay, so you're not.
That's
not-
that's a 4 o'clock meeting? I have 4 o'clock. Is that possible?
No.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, that'd be selectmen, and it's usually 6:30.
Are we on at 6:30?
I mean, if you have a preference, I can,
Should go the,
6:30.
Are we calling them to our meeting, or are we going to their
you're
meeting?
going to theirs, but I can, if I
You
can
can
say that
should go
you prefer 7.
Prefer
then
7 o'clock?
Prefer 7, if
I can,
possible.
I'll communicate that now.
This is the 26th we're talking about.
Yeah, 26th is a
Yeah, I
joint
heard it was
meeting.
7, it's a lot.
Because usually they start early. Those guys are getting old, they gotta start early.
Quiet about talking about old.
But they're always
Except when
running
no
in
one's
the door
so
too at
late.
6:30. If I've been to the last few, and then you.
Well, like last night, I mean, we were an hour behind schedule after the second item.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
It's a lot to go to.
Yeah.
A lot.
Sorry about that. Okay. Most popular motion of the night?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Aye, Captain.
Come here.
Well, that's a long meeting. Wow, I wasn't expecting it.
I don't know what time it is.
But the agenda was